In this video, we're going to explore how to add remote repositories to your local Git setup. Adding remote repositories allows you to connect your local Git repository to a remote origin, enabling collaboration, backup, and version control. We will be discussing platforms like GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket. So let's get started. So, what exactly are remote repositories? Remote repositories are Git repositories that are hosted on a server. These repositories are crucial for collaboration between developers, serving as a centralized location for code sharing and version control. They also act as a backup for your code, ensuring that your work is safe and accessible. Remote repositories allow you to track the history of your project, enabling you to revert to previous versions if needed. They facilitate code review and integration, making it easier for teams to work together efficiently. You can push your local changes to the remote repository or pull the changes from the remote repository to your local machine. Some of the popular platforms are GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket. Before adding a remote repository, you might want to check if one is already configured. To view the remote repositories linked to your local Git setup, use the command git remote-v. This command lists all remote connections along with their corresponding URLs. The -v flag ensures that the URLs that Git has stored for each remote are displayed. For example, the output might show origin followed by the URL of the remote repository on GitHub, specifying both fetch and push URLs. If no remote repository is configured, this command will produce no output. This means that you haven't yet connected your local repository to any remote server. To add a new remote repository to your local Git setup, use the command git remote add, followed by a name for the remote and the URL of the repository. This command establishes a connection between your local repository and the remote repository, allowing you to push and pull changes. The name parameter is a short, convenient name for the remote repository, such as origin. The URL parameter is the address of the remote repository, which can be an HTTPS or SSH URL. For example, to add a remote repository named origin with the URL https://github.com/username/repository git, you would use the command git remote add origin https://github.com/username/repository git. When adding a remote repository, you'll need to provide a URL. There are primarily two formats for these URLs: HTTPS and SSH. HTTPS URLs are the most common format for remote repositories. They work through firewalls and proxies, making them accessible in most network environments. An example of an HTTPS URL is https://github.com/username/repository git. HTTPS URLs are easy to set up and don't require SSH keys. However, they require you to enter your password each time you interact with the remote repository, which can be less secure for frequent use. SSH URLs use SSH keys for authentication, providing a secure connection without requiring password entry. An example of an SSH URL is git@github.com:username/repository git. SSH URLs are more secure and faster for frequent use, but they require you to set up SSH keys. Additionally, SSH connections may be blocked by some firewalls. If you need to change the URL of an existing remote repository, use the command git remote set URL, followed by the name of the remote and the new URL. This command allows you to switch between HTTPS and SSH protocols, or update the URL if the repository has been moved. For example, to change the URL of the remote repository named origin to an SSH URL, you would use the command git remote set URL origin git@github.com:username/repository git. This is useful when switching between HTTPS and SSH protocols, or when a repository has been moved to a different location. To remove a remote repository connection from your local Git setup, use the command git remote remove, followed by the name of the remote. This command disconnects your local repository from the specified remote repository. For example, to remove the remote repository named origin, you would use the command git remote remove origin. Be aware that this command only removes the remote connection from your local repository. It does not delete the remote repository itself from the server. The remote repository remains intact and accessible to others who have access. In summary, we've covered how to manage remote repositories in Git. To view existing remotes, use git remote-v. This command lists all remote connections with their URLs. To add a new remote, use git remote add, followed by the remote name and URL. This command adds a new remote repository connection. To change the URL of an existing remote, use git remote set URL, followed by the remote name and the new URL. This command changes the URL of an existing remote. Finally, to remove a remote connection, use git remote remove followed by the remote name. This command removes a remote repository connection. Next steps include learning about pushing to and pulling from remote repositories, as well as working with branches to manage different versions of your code. If you like this video, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. Visit codelucky.com for more such useful content.